Thank you for viewing Student Employment's overview of the GW Off-Campus Federal Work-Study Program. During today's training, we will go over how the GW Federal Work-Study Program works, applicable laws and regulations, how to recruit and hire GW Federal Work-Study student employees, scheduling hours, timekeeping, pay, how much the program will cost your organization, the eventual end of students' time with you, and some helpful reminders. What is Federal Work-Study at GW? Federal Work-Study is part of a student's financial aid package that is directly based on a student's demonstrated financial need. Federal Work-Study is available to full-time undergraduate students who qualify. Graduate students are also eligible for Federal Work-Study, but must specifically ask to be considered for aid. So there are significantly less graduate students with Federal Work-Study. GW's Office of Student Financial Assistance solely determines who is eligible and how much the student's allotment will be. For GW students who receive a Federal Work-Study offer, getting a job and earning that offer through work is an opportunity, not a right or requirement. At GW, students may hold one Federal Work-Study position at any given time. However, students are allowed to change Federal Work-Study positions during the academic year. It is important to note that students may not start working under any circumstances until Student Employment has notified you that the student has been hired. We will talk about this more later in the presentation. Any time worked before GW officially hires a student violates your participation agreement, and wages for hours worked must be paid 100% directly from your organization's payroll. Additionally, GW Federal Work-Study students may only work during the Federal Work-Study program year as defined in your agreement. These dates shift from year to year, but are always close to the beginning and end of the school year. Federal Work-Study is not available over the summer months. Current Federal Work-Study program dates are provided on the current year's contract and in many communications from Student Employment. Applicable laws and regulations. Federal Work-Study student employees are considered non-exempt or hourly paid employees, and they have the same rights and responsibilities of any employee. In this section, we will briefly discuss some of the applicable state and federal laws and regulations that apply to Federal Work-Study students. This is not cumulative, but rather highlights some of the most significant regulations. First, the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, from the U.S. Department of Labor states that students who perform work that does not directly relate to the institution's program of instruction may be regarded as employees and entitled to minimum wage and overtime, even if they are classified as non-employee graduate or undergraduate assistants. Also, as non-exempt employees, students are to be paid on an hourly basis and must be paid for time actually worked, including any required training. Next, the Federal Work-Studies regulations from the Department of Education says that Federal Work-Study employees may not work during scheduled class times, cannot displace full-time employees, must have a full-time employee as a supervisor, and that Student Employment must have a job description for every Federal Work-Study employee. Finally, the D.C. Wage Theft Prevention Amendment Act from the D.C. Department of Employment Services says that we must provide written notice of employment to all employees, including the name, address, and phone number of the employer, the employee's rate and basis of pay without overtime pay rates, and regular pay days in the employee's requested language. We do this at GW in two ways: the employment offer letter and a notification sent after the hire is processed. This act also states that non-exempt employees must clock in when beginning and leaving work. We must have the precise time worked as reported by the employee. All non-exempt employees must be paid at least twice a month on predetermined paydays. You can find GW paydays on the GW payroll calendar on Payroll Services website. We also adhere to the DC Sick and Safe Law by providing student employees with 1 hour of sick time for every 30 hours they work, which is paid from a central university budget rather than being tied to the student's federal work-study position. The university is also an equal employment opportunity affirmative action employer committed to maintaining a non-discriminatory, harassment-free, diverse work and education environment. The university does not unlawfully discriminate on the basis of protected characteristics or on any other basis prohibited by applicable laws in any of its programs, activities, or employment practices. We are committed to the compliance with Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as amended, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, the District of Columbia Human Rights Act, and other applicable laws relating the equal opportunity and non-discrimination. Recruiting and scheduling student employees. Next, we will briefly discuss how to recruit GW Federal Work-Study students. Recruiting takes place via the Student Employment Talent Management System. Your primary contact and timekeeper receive access to the system by taking all required trainings. For detailed information on the recruiting process, please refer to our recruiting video. GW Federal Work-Study students choose what positions to apply for. Student employment does not offer job placement services. Most positions will get many applicants, but if you are having difficulty recruiting qualified candidates, please reach out to us. Once you have identified the applicant or applicants you would like to hire, you will submit a hiring proposal through the Student Employment Talent Management System. For detailed information on the hiring process, please refer to our hiring video. At the conclusion of the hiring process, you and the student will receive a final email notification stating that they are cleared to start work. Students may not start working until we send you the final notification email. If the start date you've requested has passed once all the hiring steps have concluded, we will use the current date as the effective date of the hire. Most student employees work 7 to 10 hours per week. It is strongly recommended that student employees work no more than 20 hours on average per week so they can focus on their academics and so that more students can take advantage of the limited number of positions. Students may only work outside of scheduled class time. This is a federal regulation. Also, remember, student employees are students first. Students tend to leave the DC area for Thanksgiving, winter break, and spring break. Students may also want to work fewer hours near midterms or final exams. Set clear expectations, but be flexible where you can. By doing this, you are teaching students about professionalism and healthy work-life balance. Timekeeping and pay. Now we will address timekeeping and pay. Students record their work hours using the university's timekeeping reporting system, which is often referred to as TRS or UKG. Students have multiple options for recording their hours: by phone app, or by computer. Regardless of the method, it is required that students clock in and out for each shift. Neither the student nor the organization's timekeeper is allowed to add each shift on the time card manually. For detailed information on timekeeping, please refer to our timekeeping video. Your organization's timekeeper is responsible for fixing errors in a student's time card when they make a mistake, checking accuracy of each student's recorded work hours, and approving students' time cards every 2 weeks by the time approval deadline. Time approval deadlines directly influence students' pay and are not flexible under any circumstances. Students are instructed how to clock in and out of their positions multiple times throughout the hiring process, but they may still forget. You can help by reminding them. According to the GW payroll calendar, the work week starts on Sundays and ends on Saturdays. Students are paid only for hours work. You may pay the student for a 15-minute break for every 4 hours they work and any travel time if the student clocks in at a work site and must travel to a new site during their shift. Paid work hours also include any required training time needed for the position. After the student's hours are recorded and approved, GW Payroll Services issues paychecks on regularly scheduled biweekly paydays. Remember, it is against federal and state law to not pay employees for all time worked on scheduled paydays. Students can receive their checks either through direct deposit, if they fill out the GW direct deposit form, or by check, which will be mailed to them. Invoicing and end of the Federal Work-Study Program. Next, we will talk about how much participating in the GW Federal Work-Study Program costs your organization. Your organization is responsible for paying 25% of each student's earnings up to their federal work-study allotment maximum. You would also be responsible for 100% of any earnings over the student's federal work-study award maximum. This can be prevented by carefully tracking hours and by paying attention to our warning emails. You are also responsible for 100% of any hours the student works before the beginning of the Federal Work-Study Program that year and after the end of the Federal Work-Study Program for that year. They would be paid directly through your organization's payroll, not by invoice from GW. Lastly, there is a fringe fee added to your total that ranges from 6 to 8% and is listed in your participation agreement. So, if your student has a $3,600 federal work-study allotment but only earns $3,400 and this year's fringe fee is 6.8%, your total invoiced amount would be $907.80. We will send you an itemized invoice at the end of the program year for all students you have employed. Eventually, a GW Federal Work-Study student's employment with you will end. You or the student can end their federal work-study employment at any time. However, if there are performance issues with the student, please reach out to our office for guidance. Once a student is no longer working with you, you are required to submit a termination form, which is available through the Student Employment Talent Management System. When a student reaches or exceeds their allotment, we must terminate their employment as soon as we become aware of this. When a student is out of federal work-study funding, you may hire the student directly through your organization. Otherwise, the student must stop working. There is no option to extend their employment through GW. Lastly, please remember that we are here to help. If you don't know how to do something or where to look for information, please get in touch with us. You can contact us via email at gwse@gwu.edu or by phone at 202-994-8046. We look forward to working with you.